anyone in the YPO group who couldn't make it wants to see it, then they can have access.
I've received a couple of requests on that, so yes, that will work.
Okay, great.
And we'll give it a few more minutes.
Apparently we can't record it.
Okay. I'll give it a few more minutes before we officially kick it off, okay?
Okay. All right, fine. So only one of us can have our masks off at a time. So whoever's talking will have their mask off, otherwise it's masks on.
We don't want to break the law.
And how's everything in Greece right now with the COVID? Is it like, are you experimenting a surge like rest of Europe or not?
Well, I think we are going through that similar surge like most other places. Things have been, I think, better than most countries. Okay. So I think better. So far we've had, since the beginning, about 500 deaths. Wow. And now we have about 700-800 incidents a day. That's new incidents.
But that's extremely high for us.
Yeah,
that's
extremely high.
Like 200, 300 a day. So.
Wow.
But people are quite disciplined. I mean, we have, everybody's supposed to wear a mask inside and outside. Restaurants, there are some restrictions.
Only 4 people.
And they close at midnight. No bars and clubs and all that. Those are banned. So it's things, the government has done a good job and people are obeying for most part.
Wow. That's good.
Greeks should be very proud. Yeah, they've done a very good job compared to the rest of the world.
Mexico's doing terrible, guys. I hate to admit it, but we're not doing good at all. We have about almost 90,000 deaths already, no? For
what?
We have 88,000 deaths already, but the numbers keep growing and growing and growing. So it hasn't been very well managed, no?
Yeah.
But then again.
Yeah. We just hope this winter is not too harsh and the numbers don't go. I mean, hopefully none of the predictions are as harsh as they think they're going to be. That's the only thing for everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, it's 11 o'clock Central Standard. There's already quite a few friends here that I can see in the Zoom. I will give it a few more minutes.
Okay.
Maybe 2 or 3, and then we can kick it off. Abby, how are you? Over in Cape Town. Hola.
Hi, Armando. How are you?
I'm
Great
doing
to see you.
wonderful. Good to see you too. Huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I see David over there in DC. Alexandros, how are you?
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, guys. Hi, everyone.
Γεια σου, Χάρη.
Ποιος είναι?
Αλέξανδρος.
Γεια σου, Αλέξανδρε. Γεια σου, Αλέξανδρε. Τι κάνεις?
Καλά, εσύ.
Thanks for joining.
Pleasure.
Where are you? Are you in Athens or Cyprus?
Cyprus. Restricted by COVID.
Wow.
Just behaving ourselves.
It's hello to Harry and Lana. Thanks for hosting us today, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time and joining us. We're excited to share.
Yeah.
I will give it 1 more minute, guys. I see Samira joining. Daphna, hola.
How many people are online?
We have 13, 14 online.
Oh, wow.
Great.
So it's a good. Usually what we've been having is around 20 or something, but then the recordings, and that's why I'm electing to record these later. We've had over 200 views, so that's good.
So that's great. Yeah, no, it's not always easy time-wise, so we understand.
Very difficult for everyone, no? For yourselves. I mean, right now it's what? It's 10 o'clock?
Oh, no, it's only 6.
No, it's 6 o'clock. So it's
okay.
Yeah.
We'll go for dinner after this, and
Good.
it's a nice intimate crowd, so we don't have to have stage fright.
Yeah. I'll need a big glass of red wine afterwards after this. So no difficult questions.
No.
You should have a glass of wine in your hands, guys.
I know, really.
We all should.
I agree with you.
Really. If we weren't in the museum.
I suppose,
Yeah.
So we are in the National Contemporary Art Museum in Athens. So EMST is that. it's a museum that has various false starts and stops over the years because of funding, and so it only opened officially very recently. There's a few floors above here. There's another 4 floors above where we stand. This is at the ground floor, and so the permanent collection of the National Greek Museum is on 3 floors above. We were given, so we are the first visiting collection to show, and we have a space here on the ground floor.
Harry, let me kick it off. I think we already continue to come, but I think in respect of your time and everyone's time, I want to try to stay. Some quick logistics. No, this is a YPO Art Network event. I'm thrilled on having the opportunity to view Harry David's and Lana De Beer's collection on contemporary art. As Harry will explain here shortly, this is a collection that's been going out for a couple decades, for the last 10 years over, focused on African contemporary art or the diaspora, or artists that have been influenced by African art. So I think quite relevant, very excited. This is the first time we do something like this, at least that I know of in the Art Network. Harry, you've been so generous with this, and Lana, you too. This is the National Museum of Contemporary Art in Athens, in Greece, and we have members joining literally from all over the world. No, I will ask members to please put your phones in mute. No, for those joining. If you have questions. Right now, it's growing. We're now at 17 participants, and depending on the size, I prefer that if we leave it free, if anyone has any questions, just unmute, be respectful, ask the question. Otherwise, if at some point you want me to moderate, or like if I see many questions coming through, I will probably just ask them to put them in a chat, and then I can read them, and we can, if it becomes an issue. But I'm expecting that with the amount of participants, we will be able to handle. This will be lasting about an hour, no? And again, thank you very, very much. With you, Mr. Harry David and Lana De Beer, with their collection on African contemporary art. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Armando, for the kind introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm Harry, and Lana. We're very pleased that you're joining us today. We understand that for many of you, it's middle of the day, and thank you for taking the time, for taking this 1 hour. We promise within that 1 hour, we'll try and show you the exhibition, and also take some questions and answers within that hour. So what we have done here is we will show you our collection, which has been, as Armando said, is focused on African, the diaspora, contemporary art. That includes also artists whose work has been influenced by the fact that they have roots on the continents, or because their ancestors had roots on the continent, and that experience, the Africa experience, affects their work. What we've done, for obvious reasons, is that we've tried to do as much digital as possible. So we've innovated. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see it because we're on a Zoom call. But what we've done is we've invested in an app that does cataloging, that catalogs work. It's a young Greek app creator. So we've incorporated that into a website that we developed last minute. And also we have put the collection on a virtual tour. For obvious reasons, a lot of natural parties that would be interested in a collection like that are not necessarily based in Greece. They may be, they could be anywhere in the world. So if anybody's interested, they can go onto the Harry David Art Collection website, and through there they can navigate through a virtual tour. So we've done that for that practical reason, and also we're trying to minimize the environmental footprint. So we have no pamphlets, no book published, nothing of the sort. Yeah. So how should I go about this? I will give the floor to Lana to take us through most of the exhibition, and also give us we'll explain a little bit about. Before we go to the title, let me just say that the concept here is we're not showing the whole collection. What we've done is and we didn't want to curate the collection ourselves. So what we've done is we invited 5 individuals who come from a different walk of life, and we each were given a room. So it's 5 rooms curated by 5 individuals. Some come from academia, some come from the world of management of museums or curatorial of museums. There's a collector and there's an artist. So what we gave them, we gave each of those individuals 1 room, and we gave them the database of our collection, and they had a free rein to curate their own room. So we had the interesting outcome of this process. One of the interesting outcomes is that there was no overlap. So surprisingly, there was only one piece of work that more than one of the curators wanted, which in itself we thought was quite interesting. And the other thing is there were pieces in the collection that we expected would be chosen and were not. And
So the 5 rooms, then we were given this space, which was a rectangular white room with 8 columns, and we wanted to transform the space, and we chose I can hear someone. And
special thank you to our medallion members. Just kind of like to welcome anyone needing a little extra time or assistance on the jetway. You are welcome to board.
Let me mute.
Also, the active duty military personnel, you are welcome to board at this time.
I'm not sure who it is.
I'm not gonna pay that much money.
So we gave
Guys, let me see again because this is muted and I'm not really sure how to go about this. Hold on. Lana and Harry, can you please unmute yourselves?
Can we unmute?
Yes, I think you're unmuted already. We can listen to you again. Thank you.
Okay. We should start from the beginning?
Yes, go ahead. No, please, no, continue. Continue.
Okay, so, all right. So I was saying about this architectural firm. The one is from South Africa. So she grew up in South Africa, and we're going to move through a space that is in the concept of a kraal, which is like a South African village. The central room is the room curated by the artist, because of course the artist is the heart of any exhibition. We called this exhibition Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a South African word. It's from the Bantu languages. It's now in the lexicon of South Africa, of South African language. And in fact, it's almost, I would say, international now. And for those of you who don't know, it means a collective humanity. So it's I am only because we are. We are a community, but at the same time, we're a community that uplifts those who deserve to be uplifted. In this case here, our curators and our artists, but the uplifted are always part of a community. And you'll see the spirit of this, which came up ironically a lot during the curation of this, bearing in mind that each person only knew what room they had. They did not know who the other curators are, and they did not know who was next to them. And yet you'll see a flow that follows through this narrative here as if they were all infused, we like to believe, with Ubuntu. So we'll go into the first room. This is a piece by Yinka Shonibare. Harry and I, it's the only piece Harry and I curated for obvious reasons. It's Niki of Samothraki. It's the ancient, it's a marble piece from ancient Greece. And we thought it's coming out of Athens and entering our African village. So this is the entrance piece, and it's covered in a batik material, which has an interesting textile history. The Europeans 300-400 years ago were designing fabrics that they thought that Africans would like, and they were producing them out in the East and then selling them into predominantly West Africa. these fabrics today are considered African, and if you travel in Lagos or Ghana or any of the other countries of West Africa, you see these fabrics everywhere, and they're part of the fabric of African law and mythology. So quite a complicated history, if you will. We're going to go into the first room.
Sorry, we can't see what you're talking about.
Now they can't see the piece. Are you both windows pinned?
Can you see the work now in the second camera?
Can you see it? Like, let me ask the question to the group because I see both.
I can't.
No, can't.
No, I can't either.
There's two guys. There's two cameras that Harry and Lana are operating. One is called Lana iPhone, and I think that's the one where the picture's on.
Exactly, and it's pinned. At least I have it pinned in the Zoom.
Yeah. If you want, if
I got it. Okay, sorry, I got it.
All right, no problem.
And then the question is if everyone can hear well. What I would say is, Harry, when you speak, it comes very clearly. Lana, maybe you can speak a little bit higher, like louder.
Okay.
That would work.
All right.
Better.
Okay.
I think I have to be near her. I think we're using the same pair of
Yeah, so you
earphones.
need to
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. You're stuck with.
So
me,
I'm
Danny.
I'm not stalking her. If you think it looks weird next to her, but I'm not stalking her.
Okay,
All right.
that
So
comes
this
better.
is the first. This is the first room, and this room was curated by Emily Tsingu. She's an art advisor, and she's also the advisor to our collection. Emily chose two artists, both South African. The first artist we'll talk about over here is Moha Modiseke. Moha represented South Africa at the Venice Biennale in 2017. For those
Thank
of you who, someone's got their microphone on, sorry. So if you made it to the Biennale, you would have seen three screens on three walls with three different characters, each in a boat. These are stills from that video. We have several of them. Emily has chosen these three particular ones. Moha is pictured in the central boat here. You can see him. This piece is called The Passage. What's important about this piece, and indeed a lot of pieces that have water, is the role that water plays in the carrying of African bodies from one continent to the other. So from West Africa to the Americas, or in ancient times, North Africa, into the ancient world. Each one of the characters, if you see them, in the case of Moha, is carrying an umbrella. They're carrying one important thing. Moha is carrying an umbrella. Very useful piece for a journey. The lady here, as you can see, Mara, if you want to show here, the lady is carrying, is wielding a whip, which you might consider to be quite a defiant object. Yet look at the serenity on her face. She knows she's being taken into slavery. There's very little fighting. There's very little, she's submitted to the fate of what will happen to her. You can see in the last one here, she's sinking, and there's very little attempt to fight and save herself. The other artist that Emily has chosen is Kemangwa Lehulere. He is from Cape Town. This is a piece, obviously a reference to the education that was received by different students in South Africa. Obviously, a white student received a very different education to a Black student or a colored student. The Black students as well were taught in Afrikaans, which was the language of the oppressor in the time. English students, we had a choice, it was English or Afrikaans. And I would have received in the 70s and 80s a vastly superior education to my fellow countrymen of a different color skin. The dogs are in a lot of his works. They're a comment on mass consumerism. They also refer to the dogs that were used in the school riots. You know, most schools, most universities are where people begin protest, and they were used to control the students during that time. So vicious, biting police dogs. So there's a huge fear of the dogs. There's a piece here that I'd like to refer to. This is also a piece by Kemang, and it's the letter X in sign language, reminiscent too of the fist, the raised fist of Black power and freedom. And we'll reference that again in one of the other rooms. We want to pan around this piece here, Maro. This is another piece by Kemang, beautiful piece. And then when Maru has shown you that one, I will take you into the next room. Are we hearing okay so
Can
far?
you hear us now?
Yeah, yes. When you're staying close, what I will say is just in the spirit of how this is flowing, if anyone has questions, I initially said that you feel free to interrupt. I think it's better that you just post them in the chat, and I will be reading those to Lana and Harry at the end of each room, no? So,
Okay.
for instance, right now, Patricia Kervin is asking, could we have the names of the artists? And if Lana or Harry, if you can send those to me later, we can make sure
Yes, we absolutely will.
okay.
Yes.
We'll post them
Just-
for everyone.
We will let everyone know. And as Harry mentioned, they are also in the 3D tour that's available on the site. But yeah, this one with the beautiful images in the boats is Moha Modisa King. He's from Soweto. And the other one is Kemangwa Lehulere, who is from Cape Town.
Okay.
But we will write those all down.
Yeah, we'll
Room
send
one
them.
and room, yeah.
So in the second room, this is the second room, which is curated by Osei Bonsu. Osei is of Ghanaian descent, and he is the curator. He's a curator at the Tate Modern in London, and he also is the head curator for the Africa collection of the Tate.
Wow.
So right in front of me is a piece by Sanford Biggers. This is a sculptural piece by an African-American artist. His work is very much influenced partly by the crime, which is very rampant in the African-American communities. What Sanford does with this series of work, which are these sculptural pieces, is he tries to replicate crimes that have been committed in his communities. And what he does is, in this particular instance, this piece, which is called For Elisa, he reads about a particular crime and he will buy a trinket, a very not valuable, a little trinket from a market, and he'll replicate the crime on it. So in this particular case, he'll shoot this little wooden trinket. So if he read that it was shot 3 times, he will shoot it 3 times, and then he will turn this crime into a bronze. In some ways, making it into a bronze gives it a longer life. It allows it to go into the future, and a crime that would have gone unnoticed and forgotten in 24 hours has a new life of its own.
It's immortalized.
Immortalized, that's the word. Thank you, Donna. So next to here on the right, we have another piece of his. Sanford also works a lot with textiles, and these are one of the textile pieces that he has.
You'll notice that it's a vintage quilt. Sanford is very much taken with the spirit and the soul of a quilt that's vintage. I'd like to remind you that in the South, in the slavery, you would have worked for 12 hours picking cotton, but you would have never owned a piece of fabric to make something of your own. So very often offcuts from the lady, the slave owner's wife, fabrics would have made their way down to you. You would have laid them out on the ground, and you would have taken those little pieces to design something that you would then be able to sleep under. Sanford Biggers here talks about the soul of this blanket, so this quilt. So who slept under this quilt? Who made love under this quilt? Who quarreled? Who dreamed? Who whispered sweet nothings to each other under this quilt? And so here are the bodies that have lay under the quilt, and the souls and the remnants of who lay beneath them. Fabric and textile is very important in a lot of the traditions. Remembering that it's quite a feminine tradition. It's something that binds communities. We see it in many different cultures, but it's very strong in the African American culture. And I'll take you across to this piece over here. Maro, if you don't mind following me. This is another young African American artist. Her name is Shabalala Self. Her mother was a seamstress. This is a canvas, and again, with offcuts of fabric sewn. Shabalala addresses also the idea that the Western ideal of beauty, which is tall and slim and you know, very fit. And Shabalala says, no, look at that luscious bosom. Look at the wide hips and the full thighs. So she wants us to look at and worship another silhouette in addition to that. So it's addressing the whole Western image of what is beauty. There's another, well, I was just going to do this last fabric one here. So we'll come back over here, but since I'm addressing textiles, I want to stay with this piece. This is another African-American artist. His name is Hank Willis Thomas. And this is a nod to the Ghanaian tradition of asafo flags. So during the times of war or even times of festivities, dance seasons, they would have made these flags and very proudly display them. This particular one has football jerseys. So you can see Slovakia, Adidas, Mara, if you want to go up close. And then you see they're quite warlike images. There's lightning, there's characters with guns. So this is a discussion. Has football and football teams replaced the old concept of war or ideas of men having to compete with each other? In the left-hand corner, you see the Union Jack. The Union Jack always appeared in the asafo flags prior to the independence of Ghana in 1957. So asafo flags made post-1957 will not have an image of the Union Jack in them. I'm going to take us back across the room and just to look at this wonderful piece here. It was interesting here in Greece, when people heard there was going to be an exhibition of African art, they were all expecting to see sort of tribal art and lots of masks. And one of the questions that we have received quite often is, there are not that many masks, how come? Well, here is one. This is Kadaratia, and this is a beautiful Dogon mask with the bird, sort of a heron leaning over. And then from the eyes hang Catholic rosaries as if in tears. A direct dialogue on paganism versus the church trying to Christianize Africa and change traditions and religions. Very strong piece. Yes, tell me, darling.
No, I was going to say, so if we can pan Mara quickly here behind you, this is Wangeshi Mutu, which she plays a big part in our collection. We've been collecting Wangeshi for 20 years. We have a number of her works. If you're not familiar, she works, her initial work was a lot of collages. And recently she's been working a lot with sculptural pieces, large format bronzes.
In fact, there's a piece on loan to a show in Johannesburg whose name escapes me. It's Water Woman, along with, it's all female artists, and it's a beautiful African mermaid.
So also, since we're panning through this room, Maro, let us know if we're going too fast or too slow.
Let's make sure that you guys stay together, because when you're together, you really sound very, very loud. That's exactly right.
Okay, I will hold her. So these are two pieces by Chrysophili. These are relatively recent pieces, so over the last couple of years. In this corner, we have two drawings. These two heads, which are Mary Evans, who's a Nigerian young artist.
And over here at the end, we have Zanele Muholi, young South African artist, quite a militant leader of the LGBT community. Ose, who is the curator of this room, chose this piece because it's a nod to ancient Greek mythology, ekatocheri, which means 100 hands. And there were 3 monsters born in ancient Greek mythology who were responsible for all the natural disasters like earthquakes. At the same time, it's a very domestic scene. Muholi's mother was a domestic worker, and this piece is called Fila. There's also an element of fetishness with the black gloves blown up to form those shapes. It's also Muholi herself. She appears in all her own photographs.
Lana, can I ask the camera, like
yes.
when you do the close-ups, that's really good, no? Like there we get a real good picture of the work. So
okay, he likes the close-ups, Lay.
Yes.
He said you're doing a good job.
He's doing a great job. Thank you.
Because she can't hear, so it's great. It's glad if you tell me stuff, I can pass it on to her.
Yes, and for all the members attending, please, I want you just to manage expectations. I'm not a technician and I'm not an expert in Zoom, and we're trying to do the best in giving you a great experience. So just please bear with us. No, we're trying to do our best for all of you. No, thank you.
So this is the last piece in this room. Interestingly enough, this is by Rashid Johnson. He's African American. For those of you who are not familiar with his work, he's one of the greats of contemporary African American art, and he actually is the one of the curators. So he's curating the middle room. So we gave the room to him as an artist. We thought the center room would be the heart of the show. Osei chose this piece of Rashid's without knowing that Rashid was curating a room, and without knowing that the Rashid's room was right after this piece. So we're very happy this was chosen, and it's a way to lead into Rashid's room.
I like to believe it's the spirit of Ubuntu. Okay, so we're going into the artist's room now.
And while you walk, I want to give a warm welcome to everyone here. I see Noah, I see Samira, I see Heidi Zuckerman. I mean, we have a really good crowd following. So, and this is a wonderful collection. Eh? The best collection, Harry, I told you that. Eh?
Yes.
You're a good student, I see, Armando. Thank you.
So this piece here, we point out to the audience here, is quite an important piece. A lot of our art is African, and for obvious reasons, a lot of that art is made from recycled materials. People simply don't have the funds to buy canvases and oils, etc. In this particular exhibition, there are not many called Ifeoma Nyaeji. She's Nigerian, and the piece is beautifully called The Children of My Daughter. So Ifeoma addresses the mothers of the Igbo tribe, and she says the way you perform a relationship where you braid your daughter's hair, it's very important. We must not lose that tradition. So she takes old supermarket packets, plastic packets, recycled materials, old pieces of cotton or wool or fabric, and she braids them in the traditional Igbo way of braiding your daughter's hair. And up here you can see the these sort of granddaughter silhouettes with the lovely braided hair, all recycled material. The faces are actually, it's hard to see, but the faces are actually discarded motherboards from computer towers. So very important in terms of showing the recycled materials that you'll see very common in African art. This is an artist, an African-American artist. The use of material more than the subject matter is, again, it's the beading is important in this, although it's a very striking image.
This is Corey Newkirk, an African-American artist. He's been in the collection for almost 20 years.
Yeah. Over here is Ellen Gallagher. A very complicated piece, and I usually spend way too much time on it because I get so excited. But very quickly, Ellen was asked to do an intervention at the Freud Museum in London, and this piece, the original lithograph, hung in Freud's library. So what I'll only address, it's an extremely complicated piece, but I'll only address a few. Predominantly here you see the the spaceship, which is where the great god Sun Ra comes down from another planet in his UFO, and he rescues all the beleaguered African and suffering African Americans and whisks them off to a planet where they live in their own utopia. Very quickly, these three pharaohs represent the overseers, who were very often Black and worked on the slave farms. And their wealth is displayed by the Cadillac grill here. So they're very cool, and they each have, you know, two women on one arm, not one is not enough. The woman here pictured is an actual character. Just to tell you very quickly, her name is Eunice Rivers, and she was a nurse that took part in the Tuskegee syphilis trials in the US that ran from 1930 to 1970, about almost 40 years. So Tuskegee University was signing up African-American men, and without their knowledge, injecting syphilis into them. Some of them were just allowed to progress with the disease so they could study it, and others had different medications tried on them. So Eunice Rivers was an African-American nurse who knew what was going to happen to them, didn't warn them, signed them in, but stayed on to nurse them bathe them, and hold their hand or pray with them when they died. So a very controversial character in African American law. So I'm going to go from the Afrofuturism, sort of the funkadelic, and I'm going to jump across to this piece. This artist is called Lauren Halsey. She is from South Central LA. And this is another piece that I say is the spirit of Ubuntu, because this is 300 kilograms of cement. Her and her friends molded this glorious shape together with their hands. They massaged it into shape before it dried. And they left these interesting little windows. She's from LA, so a lot of the windows have crystals. There's a celebration of African-American culture and everything that they can be proud of. There's the CDs, the hair, the music, a lot of this Afrofuturism, funkadelic music that you'll see in the windows, and Mado can go around and show you. Interestingly, because the family was so poor, they would gather the little images, you know, that you get in a McDonald's Mac meal or things, or from the $1 store. And they would, like her aunt would say, we can't afford to go to the Caribbean. So they would put on the mantelpiece little palm trees, little cocktail drinks, whatever they could find to symbolize the Caribbean, and the family would dream about or work towards that. So each of these pieces is also gathered by people that she's loved. So they've been touched by people that she's loved in her community. They're dusty, if you see them up close, dusty, dirty. They have remnants of her hair. She likes them funkified. Those are her own words, because they have been touched by people that she loves. In each of the windows, you'll see one interesting image. There's a pyramid. These pyramids are a call to action from Lauren, because Lauren says, we may have had 400 years of slavery in America. We may have no memory of our history. However, we do have a history. Just because we have no memory doesn't mean it doesn't exist. The greatest structures in the ancient world were built by Africans. The Egyptians, all the pharaohs, pre the Ptolemaic Greek pharaohs, were Africans. We do have a history to be proud of. So it's a call to action. She says, please investigate, read, research. Don't just be reticent and say, we have no memory of history, so that means we have no history. So these pyramids are her call to action. Maro, there's a few pieces here by Ellen Gallagher. There's almost sea-ish pieces. Ellen grew up, it's the same artist as Abu Simbel. Ellen grew up in Providence, Rhode Island, so whaling town. So a lot of her images have these sort of anthropomorphic overtones. Very beautiful piece. A lot of them can be walked around. A third piece of Ellen's over here is a nod to the 1950s and 60s. Maro, can you show this piece here? Oh, I don't know if you can see it with me. Yeah, so it's a nod to the 1950s and 60s adverts. So black women were ashamed of their Afro hair. So they would have put, they would have shaved their heads, they would have worn wigs, they would have put chemicals in their hair to straighten it. And you can see the ashen face. She has used chemicals to whiten her skin as well. So there's a dress on that. But coming out of her head is this more African image with the luscious bottom and the braided hair. So reminding African women who they are. I don't know if you just want to pan those two. There's a piece by Godfrey Donker, and I've just had a complete Virginia Chihota. If you have any questions about those, I wish I could talk about everything, but it would take too long. There are 66 pieces to talk about in an hour. I do want to talk about this piece. This piece is a young Nigerian artist, Andrew Esiebo, sorry. And Andrew, there's a series of photographs of barbershops. And Andrew wants to change the concept that people have of Africa. So if I say Africa to Europeans, then you hear, you think of starving babies, you think of send $1 to feed them. And Andrew says, this is not the case. Andrew says, this barber knows who Obama is, who Barack Obama is. He knows who Bob Marley is. He knows Barcelona, Real Madrid. He has all these things. He knows more about the world than the average barber in any capital in Europe or any city in the US. So change your concept of Africa and Africans. They're not just what you know, this miniature version of what you think. This is a wonderful piece. This is Lyle Ashton Harris. Lyle is a professor of photography at the University of NYU. And this is an homage to Josephine Baker, the African-American woman who became a sensation in Paris as a dancer. You may or may not notice this person does not have breasts. That's because this is Lyle himself. Lyle dressed up as Josephine. Lyle is gay, and the bananas here take on a whole different meaning when worn by Lyle himself. Lovely Chris O'Feely, Maro, one last one there. And just the last piece before we leave Rashid's room, if Maro wants to pan around, this is a young Nigerian artist. And this should make you think of hair. And I'm not going to say anything more about it because Harry will talk about it in the last room. Young Nigerian artist. So
now we're leaving the room, so I don't know if there are any questions.
I don't see a reminder if everyone or anyone wants to ask a question, just write it down in the chat and I will be serving as a moderator here. But so far none. Please go on. Please continue.
Okay. So this is room number 4, and this is a room curated by Elvira Diangoni Ose. She's from Guinea, West Africa, and she runs the showroom in London, which is an interesting little space, and predominantly, I think, a lot of female artists. Yeah. On the left here is an artist called Violet Kuzume Hwami. She represented Zimbabwe at its first pavilion at the Biennale last year. And she takes these stock images you can see in black and white from photo albums of her family, of her friends, or even from Google. And on top of them, they're very African images. And then she paints these fantastical, wonderful colored images over them. So it's almost like she has one foot in reality and one foot in the fantastical. On the left here, or behind, is a piece by Senseni Maracela. Very interesting lady, artist that we had the luck to meet. So she's a Xhosa lady, and in her tradition, with her tribe, you only wear red when you get married. Senseli is not married, but she wears red. Why? She says, because when I go to buy my vegetables, if I dress as a single woman, the vegetable man flirts with me, makes sexual innuendo, disrespects me, and probably cheats me. But when I go there wearing red, he treats me with respect, he speaks to me nicely, and he doesn't cheat me. So every morning she wakes up and she dons her red dress, which is her armor against the world and the male gaze around her. Senseli also is a performance artist. She wears these red dresses traditionally worn by the domestic workers. And she's been wearing the same dresses, a few of them, 3, 4, 5 of them, for the last 5, 6, 7 years. As they unravel, as they age, she unravels them and she stitches, as Maro can show you here, these beautiful images of domestic workers in South Africa. So it's almost like her armor being unraveled and stitched in these simple lines that create such an incredibly powerful image.
Lana, before
yes.
you go on, Richard, I want
yes.
to just make sure that I'm honoring her. They're asking a question, hey, is it better if we focus with just one camera or not? I don't want to disrupt the flow. However,
no problem.
I think it's easier if, as you're showing the work of art, if it approaches the work of art directly, like in front, and then zooms in, zooms out, I think that might give everyone a little better perspective, no?
So you want me to just use one camera?
Well, that's a suggestion someone asked,
okay.
Richard asked, that's one. Or my alternative would be just instead of just moving the camera around in many degrees, go and focus straight and then zoom in, zoom out. But while you're in the side, I think that might work a little bit
just
better.
Stay on one piece. No, stay while we're same in, stay out. Okay, we'll try that for the next 1 or 2 and you let me know if it's working. Okay. Let me just say, okay, great, thank you. All right, we'll move into the rest of Elvira's room. In this room, Elvira addresses the history or lack thereof of figurative or portraiture in African or African-American art. This is an art piece by Maleka Mogosi, who is from Botswana. Beautiful piece. You can see the almost Victorian gold gilt frame with the image of a mother and daughter or two sisters, and a very affectionate scene. You can see down here a little girl sitting on a chair. On the left here, you can see a bust, and the bust is not of Josephine or Nelson or some stuffy old, court person. It's a beautiful African woman. So the images, it's a typical Western style portrait that you might see of a family, but the skin color is different. As an homage to the older generation, the granny sits on the floor, as do many traditional ladies of her generation. And next to her is the very typical sort of street dog that you will see in any African country that you visit. I'll take you over to another figurative work. So this is Lynette Yodom Bokai. A lot of her works are just of these figures. They're not of anyone that she knows. They're painted completely from her mind. Very interestingly, she paints one piece in a day, and then it's taken out of her studio. So this is done in a day. Her pieces very often prompt you to ask questions if you know her other work. She will have a show, I think, opening November 18 at the Tate. And this sort of, there's always, who is this person? What is she thinking? Is she going to step in the river? Is she looking at her reflection? Could she possibly have something in her little hand there? So a lot of her work always provoke questions about there's this mystery, who this person is that she's painted.
Can we please zoom in Lynette's work?
Can we zoom in on Lynette's
Yes.
work? Go closer. Is that good? You want her to go
That's
closer?
very good. That's very good. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
That's a wonderful piece. Wow.
Yeah, beautiful. Am I allowed to say that?
Yes, you are.
Now, Elvira has created a salon wall. I'm not sure if you got the Zoom image when we first walked in, but this is Elvira's very European style salon wall. And one of the pieces on the wall, which is over here, Argyris, if you'd like to focus in on this one if you can, is a salon wall. So this artist is called, oh my gosh. Toyin Ojiodotola, sorry. And what Toyin does is she creates these worlds that are what if colonialism did not exist. So it's a what if world. For this particular show for Jack Scheinman, the world she created is a gay male couple, married, who are extremely wealthy, extremely handsome, extremely intellectual, extremely everything perfect. And if you see other images from this particular show, it's beautiful people dressed in beautiful clothing, drinking tea on a Sunday afternoon, sitting on the most gorgeous furniture with the most plush fabrics around them. This particular image is a salon wall from that story, and you can see there is there's the landscape, there's the still life, but central to this whole image is this extraordinarily beautiful and striking mask and the artist's hand reaching to the thing that means the most to her on this wall.
Can we get a close-up of that? Can we get another close-up of that? I think just
a close-up of that?
Yes,
Yeah,
I think that's
close.
what.
There we go. Yeah.
Well, we might be missing some of them. Great, thank you.
I think it works better when you direct us, Armando. You should look into movie making.
No. I don't. I hope I was doing a better job. No.
No. You're fantastic. Over on the left here is another Wangechi Mutu that Harry referenced in Osei's room, and again it's collage. Very. Do you want to come dead central here from Mano from the front? So Wangechi Mutu is known for her collage work, and she distorts the female form in a similar way to Shabalala herself. She's tired of the traditional Western style of beauty that we admire, and she completely distorts, almost alien. She had the female figure. You may have seen they've filled the alcoves at the Met with her images, with those huge plates that are either on those metal pieces, also very alien-like. And then to your left, to your right, Maro, sorry.
And what's the
are a
medium?
few-
What's the medium of that work, Lana? What's is that painting?
So it's a
Is that-
combination of cutout from magazines. So
Okay.
you can see there's a donkey's face, there's a woman's thigh, there's beading, and there's paint, water paint.
Okay.
But it's primarily collage.
Wow. Okay.
Over on the right here is another piece, Mano, if you'd just like to show. There's these three images, 1, 2, 3, black, and then going to the lighter one. And this is the work again of Toyin Ojiodotola, who is the artist that had the one I just showed you with the mask in the middle. And you can see what an incredible draftsman she is here. I mean, literally, she's very concerned with the skin color. She's from Nigeria, moved to California when she was 5, and then Alabama when she was 10. Her father was a professor, university professor. So skin color is very dominant in her world. But this last one, especially to me, is absolutely extraordinary because there's hardly any, it's just very light image, pencil strokes. It's almost white, the page, but you understand that it's the face of an African person. Above are 2 more images of Zanele Muholi, who also, by the way, I think on the 5th of November is opening at the Tate Museum. I mentioned before, Lynette will be opening on the 18th. I think she opens on the 5th. Above is a small piece by Pamela Fatsimo Sandstrom, who's a young artist from Botswana that we recently encountered, I would say in the last year or 2, and we're very much taken. That's the smallest piece. We have several of her works. Again, mythology. She's from Botswana, but lived out in the East, and so she has this wonderful combination of mythologies. I'll move over. Marla, should we go here to the Pan-African? You want to start moving in on that one?
This piece here has a particular place in the collection. It's been with me since the late 90s. So even before I was focused on African contemporary, Chris Ofili was an artist that I've followed since his early days. And this is called Black Paranoia. If you're not familiar with his work, he's a British artist with roots in Nigeria.
And that, by the way, is Elephant Poo.
Yeah.
What's the name of the artist again, Harry?
Chris Ofili.
Chris Ofili. Okay, good.
Chris Ofili.
Yes. And over here is a young African-American artist. Her name is Shanique Smith. And these are all, this is a discussion on recycling, refugees. These are all old pieces of clothing. We had this in our home. It's an extremely evocative piece. You will be amazed at how many people want to hug it and embrace it. And people want to touch it because, you know, this reminds them of their grandpa, and this reminds them of their grandma, and this looks like pajamas they had when they're babies. So a piece that we've always had to guard quite voraciously because it seems to appeal to people so much.
Wow. So this to my left now. Let me just.
If you can stay closer again, if you can stay closer,
yes.
Lana and you, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Good.
So this is the work of. I'm not sure who has the microphone. I guess I'm not sure why. So this is Theaster Gates, African American artist.
Yes.
Next to him here is an artist of a different generation. This is El Salahi from Sudan. So he's in his early 90s. His place in the collection is very much of reference. So for us, we have a number of works by artists who are important historically and link the contemporary, which is the heart and the soul of the collection, with certain artists who we believe are very important in African contemporary or in African history of art. El Salak is one of them. Obviously, there are other examples of artists like Ben Nwowu or Ella Natsui. So he would be
William Kendridge.
William Kendridge. Well, yes, William Kendridge sort of somewhere in between. But these are, and that's his place in the collection. Here to our right, there's
Lubena Himid.
Lubena Himid.
Again, this is called the Venetian maps. So this is one of the canals. Again, that reference to water, like I mentioned to you in room 1. Lubena was taken as a young child on a ship from Zanzibar to the UK, and there was a storm, and the journey was extremely emotional for her. At the same time, you see the African masks morphing into the Venetian masks. And so there's a discussion here on trade, you know, the Venetian trade, and then in general touching Africa. So this is finishing Elvira's room.
Okay.
If you have any questions here.
There are questions. There are questions,
Okay.
and I want to read them to you because
sure.
you know, we're running 10 minutes before. I don't know how long, and if you are able to stay a little bit longer, I'm perfectly comfortable.
No, we are fine. We are fine. Yeah.
And again, this is only in YPO, so forum confidential, all the rules, everything. I want to make sure we're bringing like the best, the secrets, no? And there's there's some really good questions. First, Avi Levy, a really exceptional collection, Harry and Lana. Thank you for sharing it with us. If you have a few minutes after we've seen the works, perhaps you can take us through how you've gone about assembling your collection. How do you stay current with your knowledge of the work you collect? Do you use curators and advisors extensively, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, no? And his point is, how do people in our art network go about assembling the collections? And then Susan has a similar question around, are you collecting around a theme? Is there a common element, a common thread? So if you want to maybe talk a little bit about those things as you walk into the next room, please.
Okay, well, very, very good questions. I think I forgot to say that I think it's an important element that both Lana and myself are products or children of Africa in different ways. So Lana is South African, she's Afrikaans, born and bred and raised in Johannesburg. And although I'm Cypriot, 100% Cypriot, my family has been in Nigeria. For the last almost 100 years. I was raised in Nigeria, schooled my primary education there, and I visit the country almost every 5 or 6 weeks. So I assume that I would think that our aesthetic is very much influenced by our Africa experience. So the focus in this has been very natural and has although the collection did not start with that in focus, it evolved, and it's a lot more natural to us now that we're doing this rather than more generic contemporary collection that we were doing earlier on. An interesting thing is that, yes, I believe there's a question, do we have somebody advising? Yes, the first room that we showed you, which is curated by Emily Tsingu, Emily is the advisor to the collection. The interest, so what is happening and what we find extremely fulfilling is that for most people involved in African contemporary, we think that it's a very new world. So bibliography and the history of contemporary African art is relatively thin. So it's a learning process both for our advisor. So our advisor is not used to African contemporary, she's learning alongside us. And we think that that is very fulfilling, and we have to read a lot more than we would if we were not doing this. We travel on the continent to visit studios, to visit museums, to visit collections, to visit artists. So we're lucky we have the time.
Yeah, it's lucky we're with the Tate Group, which we have a wonderful relationship. Also, sort of like this private, confidential, but we have wonderful discussions. And believe it or not, I think Instagram helps. Yeah. So just perusing Instagram and different African, just, you know, the hashtags sometimes of different themes and things like that. I would say that's it.
And how do you get across like European or American, African American? How do you get to know them? Because that's obviously not in Africa, right? It's the diaspora.
That's not. Yeah. Well, first of all, a lot of the African artists are represented abroad. So the interesting thing is that there's very little. We think there's very little on the continent as far as the organized trade, the gallery scene, etc. is quite thin on the continent. Most of the established galleries are based in South Africa, That's one organized. If there's one particular country that is quite organized with good galleries that supports its artists, I would say South Africa is it. And then you have very sporadic examples, either in North Africa, in Morocco, in Nigeria, so those are relatively few and not as deep in knowledge. But I think the level is coming up because there's been a lot. It's evolving and it's improving because there's been a lot of interest in African contemporary art. As far as the African American artists, I would say it's rather easier. The artists we follow are not because of the skin color. It's because there are artists, let's say African American artists, who are very much affected in their work by the fact that their roots are from Africa. So that may be racism, criminality in communities, immigration, religion. So all those. So if that artist is affected and by those elements that you find very commonly in Africa as well, then we research, and it's usually easier because there's more depth. There's museums that collect them. There are collectors. There's galleries. So I would say that's easier to navigate through. Although now we've been looking at quite a few young African American artists as well. So
perfect.
As we become more confident with the focus that we have, we spread our wings, taking more risks as well.
Perfect. Thank you. If we can move on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So now we're entering the fifth room and fifth and last room, which is curated by Burkhard Warnhold. Burkhard is a German economist, banker, and building in Berlin, which used to be a brewery. Interestingly enough, the building we're in now used to be a brewery.
We're getting problems with the connection.
Well, so there's a dialogue, so to speak, although that building, the kin, used to be a friend as well.
We were having a little bit of technical
you hear us
problems.
better now?
Yeah, we were having a little bit of technical problems. We can hear you. Can you repeat this again? Can you go through this?
Yes, so I was saying that the common thread, an interesting fact, is that Burkhard bought an old brewery in Berlin and converted it into a space, an art space called the Kindle.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly enough, this space that we're in, the National Museum of Contemporary Art, was also a brewery. So that's an interesting dialogue that we have going here. Burkhard is the collector in the show, and he has chosen as a centerpiece in his room. He has chosen this piece by Rashid Johnson.
Okay.
I remind you, Rashid was also curating the middle room, and he's an artist himself. This piece references, it's called Throne, as in I throw. And it also refers to a throne. It relates to Chinua Achebe's book, if you're familiar with the Nobel laureate Chinua Achebe and his work, Things Fall Apart. So it has a lot of meaning, and we're very close to this piece. Behind me here is Kara Walker.
And Kara has taken this black and white cutout that you see. There's a North European tradition. You may have come across them with the tellings of, for instance, Hansel and Gretel and the various Germanic fairy tales. But she's given them a very violent, this is an imp or a child violently beating a horse. And then in incredible, Mara, if you want to come closer here, pencil and chalk, and is this image of a ferry boat on the Mississippi, with all the connotations that arise from it. The wealth that was made for these people who would holiday on them and gamble on them was made on the backs of slaves. So a very violent image of the South.
Let's go into this little cove in here. This is an artist from Benin called Romuald Hazume. This is not one piece. These are 9 individual pieces that Burkhard opted,
Burkhard
opted to present in this format. Romuald, as you can see, the material used here is found objects. So this is the perfect recycling. And Romuald Hazume says, I give to the West, I return to the West as art, what the West has dumped on us on the continent as garbage.
Wow.
And you can see wonderful cutouts. I mean, these are water cans, which are very important also in African tradition. Women traditionally travel miles every day to get water to feed and bathe or clean their clothes for their families. So these are water canisters. And then everything, I think you've gone around. So the one has hair as old heels. Another one has earrings, which are bottle caps or seeds, and old textiles and feathers that are found. The last piece that Mara will get to soon is a wonderful wink, which has been created just by a pipe, a man's smoking pipe. There we go. I think you can see it now.
Yep.
So each one is a little character of their own.
And the artist name on that is who again? Can you repeat
It's
that?
Romuald Hazume. The last name is Hazume.
Yeah, he's from Benin.
He's from Benin.
Okay.
So this artist here is a young Nigerian artist called Taye Idahor. And Taye is an artist that has been affected throughout her life by the fact that she grew up with hair that was very different to her classmates. It took her in her late teens to figure out why she had different hair, and she discovered that a quarter of her DNA was European, and hence her hair was different, and she was being teased at school. But what came out of that, the fact that she was different, was that all her work has been affected by that, and everything she does is her hair. So these are so her work is usually drawings and paintings where she shows her hair. Now, if you remember earlier, we saw a sculptural piece which looked like hair made of wire. That was the same artist. So everything she does refers to that.
You can see she has these African cutout beads, but almost the beautiful Baroque heaviness. But then the drawing in pen is her hair around it. So.
Let's move to the last piece of the show.
Okay.
And this is a piece by Hank Willis.
Yeah.
This is a piece by Hank Willis Thomas. Hank Willis Thomas is African American. This piece is called Amantla, which stands for power.
It's a Zulu word.
It's a Zulu word. And of course, the references are there's many references. Everybody would know them. You have stands for equality, it stands for power, it stands for freedom. It's a very topical, very timely. With Black Lives Matter nowadays, we're all familiar with a clenched fist. And we think that the piece that was chosen by Burkhard was very, very appropriate. And we love the fact that it's also the closing piece to the show.
And we also think it's a bridge between the two continents. I mean, Hank Willis Thomas is an African-American artist. The fist also references the Black Power movements of the 50s and 60s, but at the same time, it's called Amantla, which was the cry of freedom for the ANC and political activists, as you can see by the white sleeve, who would force their hands out of their prison cells in defiance, even though they risked getting those hands cut off by guards. So a bridge between the two continents. And indeed, as Harry said, a wonderful piece that he didn't know he was closing the show with, but so aptly chosen in the spirit of Ubuntu.
And this brings us to the close. And we're happy to, take questions. Obviously, you can always visit through our website. You can see a virtual tour, and quite a bit of detail. You can roam through there.
The website, can you repeat the website for everyone?
It's Harry David Art Collection.org.
Okay.
Harry David Art Collection.org.
Okay, perfect. I'm posting that for everyone to see in the chat. And there's a bunch of comments, Harry and Lana, just about what an amazing collection you have. collection is incredible.
Thank you.
Fantastic collection, amazing collection. I mean, I could, and you'll have a copy of this. I'll send you one as we finish. Is there anything that you would like to leave everyone in the YPO Art Network with as we come this to a closure, like a final message, like people sometimes, all of us are a little bit intimidated by how do I get to have a collection like yours? Because it's, quite frankly, it's amazing, no? What would be any piece of advice that you would give to any one of us who are listening intently to you today?
May I answer that?
Yeah, I don't have an answer. I'll give the floor to the smartest one here. And
I'll, if I may answer that. I have no background in art. All my kids were science nerds, so when I traveled, they wanted to see the science museums and the natural history museums. And I have a background in literature. I met Harry, and the first year or two, I followed him around just looking at pieces of art going, I mean, I'm embarrassed to say, but it's the truth, saying, well, I could have done that. And then I don't know what happened. One day, I guess I was listening, and I was looking with open eyes. And one day, just
you got cut off. There was a technical thing here.
started to click. So I would only say it's organic. Even the show, the way it happened, is organic. If you like it, if you think it's beautiful, then it should be part of your collection. And cultivate the friendships. Be open with other collectors, with people that you meet. I mean, we open our home regularly to offer them a meal, and we very happily walk around, and we've met the most extraordinary people that we wouldn't have met otherwise. And meeting that one person leads to another person. So it's been quite organic. There's been no device behind it at all. And I say, for me, who was a complete novice, I'm fascinated, and I'm now passionate, and so there's no reason to be intimidated. And it's art. It's your own interpretation.
I think the focus has helped as well.
Yeah.
I think the focus has helped us. It's relevant to us. It's relevant to our aesthetic, to our background, and we appreciate this narrower, let's say, focus on African contemporary, and that makes a huge difference. As I said earlier, I was been collecting since I was in my early 20s. My first, let's say, savings went into art, very different sort of art. Along the way, I was, like most of you, I assume, have the bug of collecting. I've had my ups and downs in passion relevant to this. At some point, I lost the ball, and the last 10 years I found it, and now it's a lot more passionate collecting with more of a purpose, personal purpose. And the fact that, you know, we have a common interest, that has helped as well.
Wow. One question from Patricia Kervin is, why Athens? Why is this being shown in Athens?
Good question. Well, first of all, we spend a lot of time in Athens. We were never planning to show it in Athens. It was far from we never expected it would happen. I mean, if you were asking me where would you show, I would have thought, you know, somebody would invite us to show, let's say in London or New York or on the continent, in Africa somewhere, in South Africa or the middle of the continent. You know, that was always the thought. What happened here is that we have a new museum. It's an old building, renovated, but has been closed and for many years, and just opened a few months ago. And so we were invited as the first. They heard that there's a collection in town that is different to the usual, let's say, Greek sort of contemporary art. Somebody took the risk and asked us. I don't think they really realized what it was.
No, they definitely didn't. They sort of said, us, African?
They said, you have a collection. And then when they realized it was African, they didn't back down. And it happened. I mean, look, I mean, it wasn't very easy because of COVID. We were supposed to open in May. There have been a couple of things that have helped us set it up. One of those is there was no programming that we were in a rush to, let's say, hang and unhang because there was other shows. So the show was postponed from May and it opened only in September. We were very lucky in the sense that the collection is ours. So, because nowadays I would think it's very difficult to borrow or to source pieces for a show. But the fact that the collection is ours made it easy. And of course, we've done the funding, which would have been, I think, also impossible. I mean, I'm not sure how, if it was an independent show, how anybody would have gotten funding for a show. So those two elements we think facilitated and made it possible. The fact that it's in Athens, in hindsight, we love it. And obviously it's very difficult for people to come and visit. So if you're in New York or South Africa, but it would have been as hard to go anywhere else to visit. And that's why we invested, as we opened this discussion, that's why we invested in the virtual tour, because we thought that's more important than a coffee top book. Yeah.
Good. Well, I think we're then bringing this to a close. You continue to receive a lot of really nice messages around your collection and now being so open and nice. In behalf of the YPO Network, I do want to say thank you. You've been so generous with showing this, explaining this with so much passion. And also, and not everyone knows this, but you've been very, very open and willing to have this and accommodating and flexible. So personally, I want to thank you. And you know, maybe there's a chance to bring that collection to Mexico sometime. Eh?
Sounds like an idea.
If you have a brewery, we can bring it to.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your thank you very much for your kind words and for taking the time to be with us. We really enjoy sharing it with other YPO friends, and thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank everyone for joining also. And with this, we're going to be closing the session, and we'll have a recording, posting that in the Connect site, and sharing that also, I think, through the WhatsApp chat. That seems to be probably a very appropriate. If you're not in the WhatsApp chat, please send me a message and I'll make sure that I bring you in. Thank you very, very, very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ciao. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.